if we cannot come to these commitments, we really have to adapt. Yeah, much of that adaptation, however, is not to adapt to average temperature or rainfall changes, yeah, but rather to the distribution over time. There will be more floods, yeah, there will be more and more intensive droughts, hurricanes, and changes in onset of dry and wet seasons. And all of them are directly affecting crop and forest production, as well as the occurrence and frequencies of pests and diseases. Yeah, this means that everybody will need to adapt, yeah, but it will be above all the neediest people, often living in the most exposed areas, that will find it hardest to adapt, lacking the financial, the human, the social and political resources. Yeah, we feel that forest, and from our experience we have seen that forest and trees have a role to play in adaptation. Yeah, particularly for those people that depend directly on their goods and services, yeah, which we heard this morning are around 1.5 billion people. Yeah, and there may actually be indirectly more people depending on those goods and services. Forests provide essential services such as regulation of hydrological services, provision of food, shelter, medicine, renewable energy and timber. But in particular, they're important, these services are important in times of stress and crop failure. The scope and the quality of those services is for a large part determined by the characteristic biodiversity and the ecological processes that maintain such diversity. So maintenance of essential components of biodiversity, as well as monitoring of changes, should therefore be part of any adaptation strategy. Adaptation is about reducing vulnerability. Forests and trees have a role to play in that. And in that sense, maybe I would rather think of adaptation not as part of RED, but RED as part of adaptation. Yeah, RED can actually help reduce exposure. Yeah, adaptation should also be directed at towards increase in income. Forest owners and users should be adequately rewarded for activities that maintain or enhance the provision of goods and services. There as well, RED could be of a help. Yeah, increasing food security is another important aspect of adaptation. Yes, this can be through additional income, but also through the reduction of the frequency and severity of insect pests or droughts in agricultural landscapes, by maintaining or enhancing habitat areas for natural enemies, by forming barriers for insect or fire movement, or by the regulation of water flow, reducing excess runoff in wet seasons and increasing minimum water flow during dry seasons, particularly in areas with seasonal rainfall. Adaptation also includes the decreasing of risk through diversification of land use. Many small farmers maintain patches of forest as a form of insurance in case of failing food crops, irrespective of the market value of these forests. Their ecological viability, however, may depend heavily on their connection to other forest patches in the landscape and the nearness of large protected forest areas. Many of the adaptation practices that involve maintenance or enhancement of forest areas contribute to mitigation, but are unlikely to receive money from mitigation funds. Separate funding will be required. At the same time, mitigation funding will need to consider adaptation strategies to be effective, efficient, reach those people that contribute most to mitigation, and help the forest to cope with the effects of climate change. Sustainable forest management reduces the risk of climate change, allowing for early warning systems in case of disturbances like fire, pests and diseases, unauthorized land clearing, allowing for adjustment of forest dynamics to new natural disturbance regimes, for example by adjusting tree spacing, adjusting production cycles, or changing species composition, and ensuring the distribution of benefits and the recognition of local rights. Forest certification has shown to be a useful mechanism to promote sustainable forest management and therefore contributes to both adaptation and mitigation. In order to improve the role of forests and trees in adaptation, their intrinsic value and risk-reducing potential should be considered beyond the potential market value of more tangible ecosystem services. So we have to think of things like RED+, RED double plus. More research needs to be done on specific issues, such as their role in the hydrological cycle under different climatic, topographic, and edaphic conditions, their reaction to climate change and their ability to capture and store carbon, and their role as ecosystem service provider in agriculture systems, particularly in dry and semi-dry areas. Long-term monitoring systems need to be put in place to detect changes in real time, and we heard this morning that a sense of ownership and local involvement in monitoring will be essential elements of successful monitoring. There will also need to be a change from project funding to long-term program funding, possibly involving a wide range of stakeholders. And to achieve all of this, governance mechanisms need to be in place that allow for well-informed and consented decision-making, leading to more equitable distribution of and access to all resources, including land and forest rights, information, financial resources, social networks, training and education, local leadership, as well as political and cultural resources. Yeah, and these can be achieved through long-term processes rather than short-term products, learning from past experiences in sustainable forest management, community forest management, and protected area management.